Pitching idea is never easy, especially if you're unsure of the reaction that you might get from your audience. But imagine if your audience actually started swearing at you afterwards. That is the story that Ben Wiener tells in this bonus episode of Speaker Dynamics Own the Room. Take a listen. Hi, I'm Karin Reed. I'm a 4-time author, Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, and communication expert on helping people to own the room, whether it be a physical one or a virtual one. Welcome to Speaker Dynamics. So Ben, how many pitches would you estimate that you have heard over the course of your career as a VC?
Thousands, but that's not even a big number. For somebody like me, that's normal.
Right. With that in mind, I want you to think about one of the ones that was the biggest disaster. So share that.
I'm gonna switch it on you. So
okay,
really bad ones. Like I've had a couple where the person I almost thought I had to call a medic. Like just I don't want to make fun of founders. Like I really have deep respect for founders, but there were a couple cases where one of them had to actually excuse himself and go outside because he was short of breath. And there's nothing about me that's so scary, but I think I was one of the first. Often I'm one of the first investors that these founders meet, just because of the early stage that I invest.
Yeah.
Often I'm the first one that they ever talk to, so they're just so nervous. It's terrible. I try to make it easy for them, but there've been a couple. One person was a little bit deranged, and I almost thought he was going to attack me because I was so trying to get out of it. Like it was so crazy. That I basically very honestly said, I tried to, not say you're crazy. I said, listen, I just don't really understand. I'm not smart enough to understand what you're saying. And he started to pound on the table, and he threatened me, and he said, they told me you were smart. They told me you were smart. What are you saying that you don't understand? And I'm like, okay, this is going off the rails. So you have those, but I'm going to invert it. The doozy of a pitch disaster was me. So when I started my venture capital fund in my local town where nothing good had happened in a long time, it was very counterintuitive. That was part of the fun. That I thought that I had spotted a business opportunity that other people hadn't spotted because it was counterintuitive. And I started to pitch my idea for my venture capital fund thinking, listen, I'm an honest guy. I have a law degree from Columbia. I clerked on the Israeli Supreme Court. People know me for a long time. I'm clearly honest. I've never stolen anybody's money. Of course, people will give me some money just to go away, and that'll be enough to build my little fund. And nobody gave me money. And at some point, 2 different points in my early days of pitching my idea for my fund, 2 different investors cursed me out. They actually got vulgar. And one of them in public and one of them privately said, "You're effing full of it. You're full of Schlitz," not the beer, not that word. And it's so shocking. Like, what did I say that generated such a vulgar negative reaction? And I realized later that was awesome, because sometimes it was bad and good. It was bad because clearly I had not organized my material properly, and then I learned how to do the HEART, and I would never generate that kind of reaction again anymore because now I know how to order my material. What had happened with those people was I was so off to the races and so convinced that I was right that I wasn't taking the time to set up the denouement of the hero the way I just advocated on the podcast. So part of the problem was me, that I was not organized properly, which caused them to get upset. But part of it, which was good, was that sometimes when you're onto something, you get people upset. Sometimes the visionaries are so counterintuitive that you're sort of flying in the face of convention, and it can really get people upset because they're used to the status quo. They're used to things staying a certain way. And when you say, no, it's totally different, it's going to be totally different, you can ruffle feathers. So when you combine presenting your information incorrectly and doing something counterintuitive, you can cause people to curse you out. And that's what happened to me. Both of those people ended up becoming very important to me in different ways. And one of them even gets the only character in Fever Pitch that is similar to a single actual living person that I knew is one of those people. I was so grateful to him that I kind of wrote him into his character into the book. Because
can you tell me which character it is? Can you tell me which character?
I can tell you, it's the Canadian investor who kind of dresses down Mark
at the coffee shop.
In the book.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happened to me. this investor like dressed me down and completely cursed me out and gave me a whole bunch of instructions, the same way that what happens to Mark in the book. And those instructions turned out to be a treasure map of success for me. And I was so indebted to him that I actually went out. My first conversation with him was on the telephone. He lived far away, and I actually went to his city years later, and I called a meeting with him. He had never invested in my fund. And he's like, "What do you want to meet about?" And I said, "I owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude." He's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, "Because when you dressed me down at the end, you barked at me, this series of instructions. You probably don't even remember it, but I took those instructions to heart. I did those things, and they changed my trajectory as an investor. And I owe you, a tremendous debt of gratitude." He was so blown away. He was such a rude person. I don't think anybody had ever said anything nice to him in his life. And but I meant it sincerely. I didn't want anything from him. I just wanted to go meet him and say, "You have no idea how impactful your barked instructions were in my trajectory, and I feel like I owe you a debt of gratitude." The other person who cursed me out ended up becoming one of my closest business partners because I was able to flip him. Like he was open-minded. He said, "You know what? I spoke a little bit too soon. Here's my card. Why don't we have a call, next week?" And on that call, which was more structured and I was more relaxed and he was more relaxed, I was able to walk him through, this time in a more orderly form, what I was trying to say. And he was open-minded to the point where he became one of my most trusted investors and opened up the door to me for, gazillions of dollars of investment afterwards. So the point is, sometimes you can mess up and it turns out to be a huge opportunity. And sometimes you can mess up and it just indicates that you're actually, you can get people upset. That may sometimes actually indicate that you're onto something. And because it's so different, people just aren't ready to digest it. And you have to find the people that are willing to entertain it, because they could be the key for you to open up that future.
I love that. They always say feedback is a gift. Sometimes it comes in the form of F words, but it actually can lead to a better tomorrow. And I always think if nobody asks any questions, oh man, what a miss. I have not done my job.
I'm not saying you should enjoy when it happens. I was very shocked when it happened. And that day and the subsequent days, I was very upset. But looking back with the benefit of hindsight, it turned out that it was a blessing. At the time, it just felt terrible. And I wouldn't wish that. I hope that you don't actually get cursed out when you make a pitch. But the point is, ruffling some feathers sometimes can actually be helpful. Not to the point of vulgarity, hopefully, or violence, but which both almost happened to me. But something close to that can sometimes be a good positive indicator.
Well, Ben, thank you for sharing your doozy of a pitch story. And the fact that it was so self-deprecating and honest is just a reflection of you. So I really appreciate you sharing that with our listeners and our viewers.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.